So today, name of the presentation, as you can see, is simple steps to grow your business with online marketing. So what I'm going to do is just walk through a number of, fairly straightforward, as I say, a number of simple tactics to, reach your customers online. It's very much a kind of whistle-stop tour of this stuff. So I could probably talk for hours about each individual subject, which I'm sure no one would necessarily enjoy too much. So I'll just kind of keep it fairly top level and brief. Really aim to provide you with things that you can do. Most of the things I'm going to talk about are probably free, and there are a few kind of paid options in there as well. But I'd say, as I say, most of the things are free that you can do yourself when you go away. Some of them just require a bit of effort, but many of them are just sort of actionable things that you could do kind of for your business kind of straight away. Okay, so to kick off, first slide, here we go. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Google My Business. I think this is something that a lot of people might be aware of, especially if they have a shop or on potentially an office as well. This is really where you put your business on the map, literally on Google Maps. It's as simple as going to google.com/business. That's where you would set this up. You may well have this set up already. Really, this is important for a couple of reasons. It's all about showing you to people when they're looking for directions, when they're looking to find your business physically, but also it influences your kind of local SEO. That means that it's really important that when people are searching online, especially if you've got a retail business, for people to find you. They might be searching for, in my case, they might be searching for digital marketing Sussex or digital marketing East Grinstead, and obviously I really want them to show up on that search and a variety of other searches. You don't necessarily need to have a physical location to be on Google My Business. You will see lots of shops and restaurants and pubs on there who obviously do have premises. If you're like myself, if you're a sort of freelancer or a small business, and especially if you work from home, you might be a bit uncomfortable about sharing your kind of home address. You may not want to do that and have people coming to see you. So you can actually just share service areas if you don't want to do that. So you can just say, well, I service, Crawley, Gatwick, Brighton, and that sort of thing. And that potentially actually kind of opens up your listing to a number of places. And that's quite a sort of useful thing to do because people can find you in a more broad geography. The main thing about this, I think, is really to fill it out as much as possible. So you want to kind of convey as much information as you can to people. Those could be things like, you can see an example here, I've got sort of opening times, I've got information about my business. You can add photographs, you can add descriptions, you can tell Google what type of business you are. What I would do is have a look at this, log into it if you have it already. If you don't, go and have a look and see if you can set it up. It's completely free. It just takes a few minutes to set up. If you haven't set it up before, Google will send you a postcard through the post just to show that you are at that location, and that will sort of verify you and you'll appear on the map. As I say, the main thing probably is just to try and make it as full as possible, because like many of the things I'm talking about today, it's really about keywords. So think about the keywords that you want people to find you for on the web when they're searching on Google or when they're searching on Google Maps. Try and include those keywords as much as possible, perhaps in your descriptions. As I say, try and think about all the options you have there for your sort of skills and products and services, put those in there, and then people will be able to find you more easily. This is something you might say this contributes to local SEO. I'm going to talk about SEO in a couple of slides' time, but in terms of finding you locally, then Google My Business is a really good way kind of to start with that. Other things you can do, Google sort of more recently has tried to make this a bit more like a social network. So what you can do is put in updates. So you could put in your latest company offer. It has encourages you to sort of talk about your COVID-19 status as well, for example. So if you had special kind of, I don't know, visiting rules or different opening times from what you would normally have, then this is a good place to kind of express that, and people will find that when they're searching on their phones or they're searching to find you. Also, the final thing, I guess, with this is it's a place for your reviews as well. So you can take a link from Google My Business and you can share it on your social media and say, please review our business, or you could have it somewhere in your, say, your restaurant or your shop. Again, saying, please review us. Positive reviews are naturally, really, really good for your business. When people see those on the map when they're looking for you, especially if they don't know you already. So that's a way, to get those reviews. One thing that people probably don't think about so much, they may well think about Google as their first port of call to set up their business on the map. But there's also Apple Maps and Bing Maps. Apple's probably the second biggest, I would say. So probably the second most important for that reason. And then Bing Maps as well. No reason not to list your business in all three, really. Again, it's a simple process. It'll take you about, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes to do all three and to fill out all those details. And then you get a sort of permanent presence on Google when people are searching, and potentially just get some free traffic when people are looking for you on their phones. Next slide is all about PPC. So I said I wouldn't talk about paid stuff too much, but I am going to talk about paid stuff now. So here we have the famous sort of Google page you'll all be familiar with. Google, as you probably know, kind of dominates the search landscape with up to kind of 90% of share in a lot of country markets. There are some exceptions. If you look at Russia or China, there's some local players. Japan and South Korea, Google has a smaller share, but in Europe particularly, Google has up to, as I say, about 90% of share in a lot of countries. They won't share that information with you because it's a very sensitive thing, and obviously there's lots of potentially some concerns about monopolies and market dominance. But that's the kind of real situation, which is why a lot of people really focus on Google for their their SEO work, but also for their paid campaigns. So for most businesses, Google's probably the place they're going to go to advertise on PPC. PPC stands for pay per click, so just meaning that you only pay when someone clicks on your ad. You might hear PPC talking about other types of advertising, so you talk about Facebook PPC, for example, or other places where you might have a pay per click kind of model. Microsoft also exists. I mean, that's the sort of second biggest place. So people who search on Bing. It's only probably, as I say, about sort of 8 to 10% of the market, perhaps, for search, the volume of searches in the UK. It's probably the place where you would go mainly if you're kind of maxed out on Google. You have quite big budgets, you're quite advanced with doing Google advertising, you might kind of head to Microsoft to get that extra kind of reach. Sometimes also because the kind of person you feel like the kind of person that uses Bing is perhaps a better audience for you, you might use it again more extensively. But most people would certainly find Google to be the first place just because of that, that kind of bigger reach. And it's obviously simpler just to use one thing rather than use a couple. I'm going to use through the presentation example of accountants based in Sussex, just so that I can give you some sort of real examples and show you some kind of screenshots of that. Looking through the page that we have up here, I was going to point at it, but you're not going to see when I'm pointing, so that's not a good idea. But yeah, so you can see the page here. I'm sure all of you have searched on Google many, many times. We've got a search here for Sussex accountants. Just to break that down a bit, as you'll notice sort of usefully in the top, you've got 4 results. The first 4 results are all ads. So these are all people who are paying, to advertise on Google. You've got, Bognor Regis accountants. You've got these other guys who are presumably all based in Sussex, and they're appearing on the top of the results. If you click on those will all cost those people a certain amount of money. That could be anywhere between, I'd imagine for these guys, probably about £2 or £3 potentially, depending on the type of thing that's being advertised. People can kind of range anywhere from, I would say, £1 or £2 to some really, really competitive industries. Might be as much as sort of £15, £20, things like mortgages or gambling, things which have very high returns and very competitive. People will be prepared to pay those kind of amounts. It seems kind of incredible. I'm sure most people in this room will want to pay that much for a single click to the website, but obviously it works for them. They are acquiring customers, through this method at those rates. But it's a marketplace, and people kind of work out what they can afford and will only sort of be prepared to pay that. The main benefit of search advertising, I'm going to say, is, as I say, is what you get what you pay for. So you're going to get what comes through to your website. When someone clicks, that's when you pay. It's not like advertising on sort of outdoor or on a newspaper or TV, where you might have to pay up front for an ad. And lots of people are going to see your ads on TV naturally. Lots of people might see your ads in an outdoor advert, but you're not going to know exactly, what the effect of that is, and it's quite hard to trace. I think one of the advantages of digital marketing is that most of the time it's very, very trackable, and you can really understand what's happened. Someone's clicked on your ad, they've gone to your website, they've purchased something. You can kind of track that all the way back to the sale and really quickly sort of work out an ROI. The main thing with PPC or with Google Ads is to create an experience, sort of virtuous experience, where someone searches for your service, they see what they've searched for in the ad, and they click through to a page that's talking about that service. That's what you should really be aiming to do. That makes it very simple for everyone. It's eye-catching. They've searched for something, they see that advertised, they click through and they buy. The main thing being to try and make it very seamless and to make people, put no barriers in their way, so that they get to a page. When they get to your landing page on your site, it should be really, really easy to transact. So it should be easy to buy, or it should be easy to contact you through a contact form, or it should be easy to, I don't know, to download something. Whatever you want them to do, it should be really, really super easy to do. And you probably shouldn't make them go through many steps. So don't make them go through lots of pages. Don't make them kind of give up their life history to get, to buy something, or to get the content. That can be a barrier, and that can make people drop away. So you've always got to have a little bit of a balance there, even if you do want to acquire kind of information from people. It would be nice, obviously, if people buy things straight away, but for more complex goods, if you're buying a holiday, if you're buying a car, there may be a whole sort of period of research. You may be looking at lots of different websites, watching videos on YouTube, going to social media, and maybe eventually coming back to buy via a search. So it really depends. Some things can be very quick, like buying a quick book or CD. Other things obviously going to take longer. Landing page is really important. Like I mentioned, it's great to have you've got to really have a landing page that's relevant to what people have searched for and to what you say in your ad, and that's really important. It's also important in terms of how Google works. I won't go into all the kind of ins and outs of the algorithm right now, because that could take probably an hour in itself. But basically, there's two things. It's how much you're prepared to pay, and the kind of quality of your campaign. The quality is really about what Google sees as the relevancy, and that's how many people have clicked out of how many times you were shown. Having a really good landing page experience will help as well. But it's important to note, I guess, that it's not the person who pays the most who always kind of wins the auction and comes out top. This kind of quality aspect of it, having a really good campaign, really matching people's searches with what you're advertising and your ad copy, and that's really important as well. And it is quite a level playing field. It gives the opportunity for kind of smaller players to compete with big companies. Big companies, obviously more attractive in some ways because they're well known. People will know that brand. But smaller companies can also compete on Google Ads quite well, and the kind of algorithm, the auction system, does facilitate that. Speed, I think, is the final thing I want to talk about. So yeah, speed is really important. I know we've got some web designers, I think, in the audience today, and they will, I'm sure, sort of back this up. Yeah, both for Google Ads and for SEO, which I'm going on to talk about next, speed is kind of the essence. When I say speed, I mean the kind of the loading speed of your website. If your website, when you go onto it, or someone else goes onto it, takes seconds to load, that may not seem like very long, but people are really kind of impatient, and they really want to get on what they're looking at, and that can really put them off potentially, especially on mobile phones. We're all kind of time poor, rushing around, doing stuff on our phones. We really just want to get straight to information. Google will kind of penalize you if you have a slow site. There's a way you can kind of check this out. One thing I didn't mention, which I should have mentioned at the beginning, is that all the links that I mentioned today, I'm going to share a document with you at the end. So don't worry about trying to write anything down or remember what I've said, plus some other sort of resources. You can take that away. One of those links is here. So the Google page speed checker is something to have a look at. You can just put in your website. It'll give you back a report, and it will tell you basically how fast your website is, both on desktop and on mobile. And it'll also give you, what's really useful actually, is it doesn't just give you a score, gives you kind of a traffic light score, red, amber, and green. If you're in the amber, that's probably fairly average. If you're in the green, that's great. If you're in the red, there might be something to kind of think about and maybe have a look at with your developers. It also gives you lots of technical information about what's causing your site to be slow. So again, that's something you can hand on to potentially a website developer or an internal person if you're at a big company, and they can maybe adjust that. It will be things like having really big, pictures on your website and stuff that's really slow loading, or perhaps not using some of the kind of up-to-date technologies that you can use to make your website faster. But it's a really important thing to look at. If you're doing PPC advertising, you will be penalized in the score that you get from Google, which potentially make it more costly. If you're doing SEO, then if you're optimizing for SEO, then potentially that will also be a sort of penalty that Google might apply a little bit to your visibility, because you've got a slow site. Google's very much looking at mobile first now. So the mobile site probably, again, is the more important one. Most traffic in most sectors comes from mobile phones these days. There are some exceptions, and sometimes there's a balance, but mobile tends to be more and more important. So that mobile version of your site, is really important to make it kind of fast and to make it as slick as possible. Next slide. So, okay, yep. So SEO. Yeah, so SEO stands for search engine optimization. You might hear it called organic traffic from search engines. It's not called this because it's really healthy and environmentally sound. It's just because it's free traffic rather than paid traffic you get from PPC. So that's why it's called organic. You might hear it called natural traffic sometimes, or natural listings. SEO is all about making your website be as visible as possible on Google, so as high up the rankings as possible. Being high up the rankings normally will definitely means that you'll get more traffic. The number one listing, attracts kind of exponential amount more traffic than even the number two listing on Google. So it can, make a significant difference. And certainly once you kind of go down the page, the percentage of traffic you're going to get from that page is much, much lower. That's even more amplified, I think, on mobile. You'll find, obviously mobiles don't have a bigger screen. I'm looking at you now at quite a nice kind of big home computer screen. If you're on a small mobile, then people don't have the patience to go through pages and pages of listings. So it really is important, particularly on mobile, to get in the top, at least half of the page, I would say. And then that's, where kind of SEO comes into play. It's not necessarily realistic to be at number one for every keyword that you're interested in. Being on the first page, is desirable, and being in the top 10, I guess. You may find it's more achievable to kind of get to number one on more sort of niche keywords that you have, and that might be a better target. Just bearing in mind how many people, all your competitors, all the people who want to appear for that keyword as well, especially if it's a very generic keyword. If it's something like mobile phones, obviously every mobile phone reseller or manufacturer in the country might want to be number one for that. Might be much easier to be at number one for your brand name, or for maybe a specific kind of model that you sell, or something like that. Often kind of seen as so it's an ongoing process. There's not really a case of doing SEO and then kind of walking away and kind of it's done. We don't need to look at that again. It should really, a bit like your website probably, you should be trying to develop it all the time and kind of keep going with it. It's all about, getting a good visibility for your keywords that you've chosen. So you tend to select a number of keywords that you want to target, and then your website structure, content that you have. These are all things that will influence SEO. Also kind of links into your site from other websites, other good quality websites. The structure really on a basic level to get going with SEO is, as I say, to think of brainstorm a keyword list. This should be all the things that you want to appear for when someone searches on Google. You might just kind of ask around. You might look at your website, think about your services. You might want to apply a geography to that. So with our Sussex accountants, it's not just we want to appear for accountants, we want to appear for Sussex accountants, or Crawley accountants, or Gatwick accountants, all those kind of things. These are all the different ways that people search. That's what you're thinking about. How do people search for me? How can I appear for those things? Yes. So what the areas you service are important. So think about geographies as well. Things like certain paid tools you can get. I tend to use Moz, but there's a couple of things as Moz or SEMrush. There's quite a number of different SEO tools you can get. Some of them quite cheaply, so you could pay about $100 a month to track your keywords. That will tell you where you are today. what positions are you at for the keywords that you're interested in, and tell you where your strengths and weaknesses are. So that's quite illuminating. You might say, well, we're doing really well for this set of keywords, these services, but we don't have anything for this set of services. Always bear in mind that you really need to have those words on your website in order to appear for them. Google's not a mind reader. They can't guess that your business is all about this, X and Y. So you have to be quite literal. It is just a computer that's kind of going around the web, looking at everything and trying to work out what everything means. So it's really important to kind of be fairly explicit about that. And if there is an area which you're interested in appearing for on Google or other search engines are available, yeah, make sure that's there. Make sure you write some good content about it. You can also use these kind of tools to research and find, you can put a topic in and it'll spit out a load of keywords and keyword combinations that have a good level of traffic. And you might think, okay, these are really relevant to us. We're going to target those with new content, which we're going to create. We're going to write a blog. We're going to have a new section or page on our website about this, and then we'll attract those people to us. I've got a list of free SEO tools actually on the links. There's some educational information there as well about how to optimize your pages on your website, some of the kind of character limits and that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in that, it's a valuable way to spend your time just to do some basic work on your website, and you'll get some good return for that. And then the other thing really is just creating good quality content. Google really is all about, Google doesn't want people to stay on their page. They want you to go off to the thing you've searched for. So it's all about kind of answering users' queries and sending people to those places. So the more you can kind of think about SEO really about is you are trying to answer questions that your clients or your audience might have. If you can help your audience, if you can provide that information, then they will come to you when they search for those things. And obviously potentially they'll buy, and you'll create trust, and you'll show that you're a market leader, and you'll show credibility. So I think really on the basic level, I would say there's lots of things you can do for SEO. There's lots of things you can learn from those resources I just talked about. But actually, really, at the end of the day, it's about creating good quality content that answers the needs and maybe literally the questions of your audience. A little exercise you can do, which is really simple, rather than maybe even buying these tools, is just to search for keywords that are really important to you on Google. You will then see what comes up. So you'll see the landscape, what are your competitors doing, maybe where you are as well. But also you'll see certain topics. So if you put in some of your main topics, Google will actually suggest a lot of other things that are related to your topics. And some of those things will almost be like blog titles in themselves, which you can then just go away and write a blog about this. Oh, look, Google has shown me that all these people are searching for this topic that's related to what I'm talking about, what I'm interested in. I could then go and answer that question. I could write about that topic. I could write about what are the best ways to advertise on TikTok or something like that. So anything like that will help bring people that are relevant to your business. Think about creating a content strategy, based on those things. One thing you might also do is SEO works really well, or should work really well, with Google Ads. So if you do identify that your SEO is quite poor in certain areas, then potentially if you set up a paid campaign around those areas, that would bring you traffic for those particular areas until maybe you'd sorted out your SEO, or till your SEO had improved. And maybe you should create a strategy really that works between SEO and PPC, and they can kind of work very well together. Perhaps you can kind of fill the gaps with PPC, or you can just kind of make sure you're sort of aligned with your SEO and your PPC. So social media, I think I just mainly wanted to show this slide just to show you Jack Dorsey from Twitter's beard, because from being a sort of fresh-faced founder of Twitter, he's sort of turned into a kind of aging hippie now. What you'll notice about this, we've got Jack Dorsey of Twitter, we've got Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn on the right, we've got obviously Mark Zuckerberg, I'm sure most people recognize at the bottom. Tech companies, very white and male dominated, all the founders in Silicon Valley. These are the kind of main platforms that you'll know, probably the main ones that are very applicable to business, I would say, as well. Often you'd say LinkedIn and Twitter might be for B2B, and they're probably the most popular B2B platforms. Facebook sometimes as well, especially for certain types of businesses, restaurants, entertainment, that kind of thing. Can be a good place for businesses. Some businesses will maybe doubt that a little bit, but it can be very effective for business. What you need to do, though, I think, and we'll have a little sort of run through some of the main platforms here is choose your platform carefully. Don't feel like you have to be on every platform there is. There's many platforms now, and some are more applicable, than others. If you were chasing a youth audience, maybe you'd be looking at Instagram and TikTok and Snapchat. If you're B2B, as I say, it'd be LinkedIn, Twitter. If you're a restaurant, Facebook. If you're a film company, Facebook. If you want to reach people in your local area, then maybe it's Facebook as well. Talk about Twitter first of all. We've got an example here again of the account that's in Sussex. I think Twitter is a really good place to build a community, to get people following you, to build it up around your brand. I think with a fairly sort of good, consistent effort, you can build a kind of good following on Twitter. It's probably one of the ones you can build up a following more quickly. You might find it hard to build a following on Facebook without paying for it, whereas on Twitter, with a bit of effort, you can do that, I think, a bit more quickly. Things to do, simple things like just following people in your sphere, so in your sector, so other companies, competitors, partner companies. Could have also followed journalists and influential individuals within your industry. Journalists love Twitter. You'll have seen that politicians love Twitter. Some of them a bit too much, perhaps. So it's not one of the biggest social networks. So Twitter now has probably fallen into kind of probably fourth place now. Probably Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and then Twitter in fourth. But Twitter is quite influential, I would say. As you know, you see it in the press all the time. People do use it a lot to kind of share their thoughts, obviously kind of often quite maybe a bit too quickly, but it is a good place to kind of talk to the people in your particular industry. There will be a community of those people that you can follow and get to follow you, and you can share your content with them. There is a negative side, obviously, things that are popular are entertainment, sport and politics, but there's a negative side, with trolling and abuse. Twitter, it's really important to remember that Twitter is pretty much open and public, so anything you put on there, everyone can see. It's not like, Facebook or other things where, sort of personally anyway, it's just your friends will see it. Everyone's going to see everything on Twitter. Just to look at the examples we have here, I think these are quite nice examples. We've got some quite nice sort of visuals here on the top left and the bottom. Photographs always help things stand out. So on all the social media platforms, I think photographs are really important, and video. Important to get a message out. Here we've got in the middle, we've got, I did this around the budget. You can see here straight away, these guys, Swindles Accounting, have got their summary of the budget out. This was, I think, the afternoon of the budget. They'd already prepared ahead of time, putting out their key points about the budget so that their clients can see that. So that's a really good way of giving some useful information to your clients, showing that you're knowledgeable. Really sort of real-time stuff as well. They would have had to watch the budget, obviously, quickly note down all the things, and then quickly draft a blog about it and get that out on Twitter. Twitter is a really good place to do that, because it's all about kind of breaking news and spontaneity to a certain extent. So yes, I think there's just some quite nice examples there of different things. I think for Twitter, and probably for any social media platform, it's just about creating relevant content for your audience and thinking about your audience. You could be looking to entertain, inform, just to keep them interested, not to be selling all the time. So, you can obviously use all these things. We're talking about business here, to sell your products and services, but don't be doing that all the time. You need to really think about adding value, sharing interesting stuff with the people. That's why they'll follow you. They won't follow you to kind of get a repeated kind of sales message. Videos and images, I've already said that helps you stand out. You need to be conversational. It is social media, so you shouldn't really, again, be just kind of broadcasting all the time, shouting out your message. You've got to listen to what other people are saying. You've got to share what they're saying as well. So again, if there's partner companies that you have, if there's companies that you just kind of get on well with, maybe local companies, share their messages, retweet, quote tweet those messages. Then that's a really good way to build up your following, and they'll do it back for you. So this kind of idea of sort of sharing the love, I think, is important. If you're a retailer, for example, it's a really good idea to share the tweets perhaps of your manufacturers. So if you're a sports shop and you share Nike's tweets that are about stuff that you sell, obviously they're going to have a whole range of amazing content from Tiger Woods and all of their kind of sports stars and videos and that kind of thing that you can't, as a small business, kind of produce very easily yourself. So you know, you should be happy to share that. Saves you time, and it's great content that's really relevant. And then finally, use analytics. So all of the platforms have analytics. Twitter has analytics. You should be looking back at your tweets. And the best way to learn is to see the ones that reach the most people, and to kind of iterate on that. So look down and see which ones were kind of breakout, which ones reached the most people and had the most engagement. Those are the two important things. How many people did it reach, and how engaging was it? Engaging means, do people actually interact with it? So did they retweet it? Did they like it? And that, because it's not good to have lots of reach but no engagement, or the opposite, because it shows that people are interested. If you reach lots of people and no one really kind of interacts, then there's something wrong with that message potentially. So look back in the last couple of weeks and try and learn what's good, what kind of message is resonating, and then try and do more of those things. Just try and understand why a particular tweet or message kind of reached more people than the other ones that you did reached. You're most of the time you can unlock why it happens. You know, maybe it was, again, that budget thing would have reached a lot more people than maybe a normal tweet or a normal day would have done, because it was really relevant in that moment. Next up, we have Facebook. So Facebook is, as I'm sure everyone knows, is the big social network, the one where kind of half the world's population is on Facebook. Also, Facebook owns Instagram, so they bought Instagram for $1 billion back in 2012. It's also got a whole range of messaging tools which you can integrate with your page and use to communicate with people. That can be, you know, Messenger, Facebook Messenger, or WhatsApp. You can have those on your Facebook page and use those for customer service. These apps, as you know, will always be in the top 10 of the App Store, the most popular kind of apps around. You know, for this imaginary encounters that we're talking about, you know, it may not be the most obvious thing to have Facebook. I think a lot of business people will say, well, you know, Facebook is a bit of fun, you know, have a laugh there, but I can't see the relevance to my business. Yeah, I kind of understand that argument, but I would also say that Facebook has such great reach, and it has such reach across the board. So you know, demographically, you've got younger people, you've got middle-aged people, you've got older people. Lots of people's parents potentially will be on Facebook. So if you want to reach a broad audience, you know, it's really good for doing that. The other thing is, people are just people. So again, we might have our business heads on now, but later on we'll be looking in Facebook. There's no reason not to target people necessarily just because they're in their leisure time, as long as you get the messaging correct. I think Facebook can be a great place to reach people locally as well. I think I mentioned that before, or within a certain community. It's quite easy to advertise or to sort of get your message out to a very distinct set of people. You know, we could advertise on Facebook for people just around Crawley plus 10 miles, Crawley plus 20 miles, Crawley, Brighton, East Grinstead. You know, you can really kind of pick and choose. There's a huge amounts of volume available on Facebook, so you don't necessarily have to spend a fortune either to reach quite a large number of people with a paid campaign. So yeah, so for a small chain of accountancy firms that we're kind of imagining at the moment, it's probably quite a good place for them to advertise if they're focusing on a local area and to build up this kind of community image. Facebook really favors video and image heavy updates. Video is really well rewarded on Facebook. The algorithm likes video. Facebook wants people to sort of share videos, and you'll notice your own Facebook feed has probably become a lot more video heavy in the last 2 or 3 years. One thing to bear in mind, obviously, is that emotional content and storytelling content is very popular. The original thing for Facebook, obviously, was sharing with your friends and your family. You know, it's quite busy now. Lots of other things. There's brands, there's adverts, there's news, there's politics, and all these things. But originally, really, it was about friends. So just consider that when you're using it. It's a great place for events as well. We could have set this event today on Facebook. You can kind of build buzz around an event by placing it on Facebook. It can also be a really good place to sell stuff, to list products. It's being integrated at the moment. Shopify have done a deal with Facebook and Instagram. So you'll see a lot more products turning up in your Facebook feed, and you can kind of list your products on your page kind of very easily. So you can actually directly sell as a business through Facebook. What else to say about it? I think the examples here again are nice ones. I think what I like about The slide is, PRB accountants, they put effort into kind of branding their Facebook page nicely, using the masthead. They've been talking about the budget. I think you'll notice the difference here is that people can say a bit more. So there's more space on Facebook to speak. You've got your limited characters on Twitter, as you can say a bit more on Facebook. Again, it's about measuring, it's about understanding your content and how it's performed, using Facebook Insights in this instance rather than Twitter analytics. I think the main strategy for all social media is to come up with a kind of know your audience and come up with a strategy that reaches them. So you may have several different audiences, you might want to tailor different messages to them, and potentially building an editorial calendar so that you sort of list your events during the year and you kind of plan out your strategy for social media. It's very hard to reach people, I would say, organically through Facebook these days. The days of being able to have loads of followers and loads of reach kind of for free, I think those days have kind of gone, and you may well find that when you share something, if you've got 1,000 followers, it only reaches, I don't know, 50 people or 100 people. People often see it now as a paid platform, I would say. I haven't unfortunately got time to go through all the sort of paid options, but there are many and various. And if you just think about all the things you tell Facebook, you can pretty much target people for those things. People who've just got engaged, people, where they live, people's interests, all these sort of things you can target. And there's a lot of sophisticated targeting. Very simply, you can boost a post that you have. So if you've never done advertising, you could post something on Facebook and press the boost button, put 20 quid, put 50 quid behind it, do some simple targeting, and that would be paid advertising. But above and beyond that, the kind of thing that I might do with my clients is you've got a whole suite in the ads manager of really sophisticated ways to target people, and you can do some quite advanced things and all sorts of formats, video, all sorts of carousels, different sort of ad formats you can use, and lots of ways to use data as well. So yes, there is a really big advertising platform. You'd use that also for Instagram. So if you wanted to advertise on Instagram, you would have to have a Facebook ad account to do that. So it's kind of two platforms in one. In that respect, it's quite easy to put an ad campaign on Facebook and then kind of transfer it across to Instagram. Right, I realize I'm running over in time a little bit, so I'm just going to quickly talk about LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, also really important, I would say, especially for B2B businesses. As I say, Twitter and LinkedIn are the two obvious places, I would say, if you're looking to social media for your business, if you're a B2B business, or any business, but B2B particularly. These are just two examples of on the left, a personal profile from someone from LinkedIn, actually, and then LinkedIn's own page. You can have a page like you'd have a Facebook page, and you can have a personal profile, of course, as well, just like you'd have a Facebook profile. So it is a bit like the business version of Facebook in many ways. Probably the overarching thing to think about with this is, again, think about keywords. So if you're building your personal profile, think about all the ways you'd like to be found on LinkedIn. So if someone was searching for, digital marketing in my case, or Google Ads, or all these kind of things, I want to mention those on my profile. So that's what you want to do. Think about all the keywords that are important to you and try and mention those on your profile in some way. It's really good for sort of branding your business and creating a good impression of your business. What you might want to do, something that I've done with clients, is sort of manage your senior executives' profiles. They may give you permission to kind of manage them for you. So you might just take all of those and then make sure those are really nicely keyworded. They have nice imagery, that they're all branded to the company brands. That's something that's quite common. And you might notice that if you go through several kind of, the board of a big company, you might see there's a kind of similarity between many of their profiles because they're probably managed centrally. Also important thing I think to note about LinkedIn is that it's often the case that individuals have a much more powerful network than the company does. Company might have 100, 200, maybe 500 followers, but individuals might have, I've got about 4,000 connections on LinkedIn. So individual people at your company might have much more powerful followings than your company does. So what that means is you should really leverage those people, get those people to share the blogs, to share the messaging of the company. If it's on the company page, get them to share it or like it, maybe interact on it, or just get them to be the primary people who share certain updates. You've really got to kind of get everyone on board, especially at that senior level, to get the message out on LinkedIn. The other things you can do with LinkedIn are obviously you can use it for job hunting, and companies can use it to advertise their jobs. And if you're a salesperson, you can use it to hunt down leads. That LinkedIn has products for those things as well, special products. And in terms of advertising, it's fantastic to advertise, very similar to Facebook. You have all these things, but on a company level. So you can find people who have a certain job title, a certain sector. So again, if you're a B2B company, you want to reach a certain niche, then LinkedIn's fantastic. LinkedIn advertising is fantastic for that. And then when it comes to sort of the organic side of LinkedIn, again, it's about sharing really interesting, relevant updates. You can share perhaps some slightly longer form content on LinkedIn, and that's really acceptable. And video is important as well. And then finally, very briefly, just going to talk about video. I mentioned video many times. Video is really important. People are very visual these days. People don't have much time, so they don't want to necessarily read kind of long essays about things. Videos are very immediate and very effective. All of the social media channels, as I say, tend to favor video, so you'll get better reach by sharing videos rather than just text kind of updates all the time. Good example here, we've got the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, again on the accountancy theme. You might think they'd be a bit boring, but actually they've tried really hard. Sorry, accountants, if you're out there. They've tried really hard to be kind of colourful and break the image of a slightly grey image of accountants potentially. They've got their spreadsheet robot, and they've got some really nice videos actually, all talking about young accountants saying, how do you get into accountancy? There's a lady at the bottom talking about, what's it like to work for a big company in London and that kind of thing. So it really brings everything to life. That could be a topic maybe that would be seen to be quite traditional, but they've really put a lot of effort into creating a really nice YouTube page here. Lots of videos, lots of stuff to promote the sector, that the industry they're trying to promote, accountancy, because they're the governing body. So the YouTube or Vimeo or wherever you want to put your videos, you can obviously upload videos directly to social media. So again, Facebook will love to see your videos, and they will if you share video content, it will go further on social media potentially, as I say, than a blog or something that you share that's text-based. So really think about creating video. It's easy to create for free, to create a YouTube channel. It doesn't have to be a great cinematic creation like an ad campaign that you might see for British Airways. You can just do fairly simple. These videos themselves are just really talking head videos. They could have been filmed on a phone. Main thing to think about is just not professional lighting, but just some lighting. Make it very clear. Think about the audio and use subtitles potentially as well, because people don't watch everything with the sound on, especially if they're in a busy place. Think about things like that. But video, just to leave you with that thought, can be a really, really effective way to reach people on social media and on your own website as well. Okay, so we're going to go to the breakout rooms now.